Hi there, this is Joanne from TrueAuthenticPower.com from Tapping.me, and I'm also the creator of the program Catapulting to Confidence. Before I forget, I just want to suggest to you that you subscribe to my channel. I do a lot of audios and videos explaining about tapping and actually doing some tapping so that you can understand better why or how or what might be in your way and why you're blocking it. So if this resonates for you, then subscribe to my channel, or you can connect with me on my website, TrueAuthenticPower.com, and sign up for my newsletters. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk about feeling abandoned or unwanted, and how can we shift that perception and feel differently about it. I consider this to be two parts, and part one is the actual addressing of the feelings and how that resonates in your body, how you're feeling in your body when you think about being abandoned, unwanted, or even rejected, because they're all kind of the same. They're all kind of the same feeling. They're all kind of for different reasons, but they can react in your body in the same way. They can react in your mind with a similar sensation. So what do you do about that? Well, I want to tell you some stories because people tend to tap on just the surfacey kind of stuff a lot of the time. And if you're not getting to the deeper issues, then you could be tapping on the same stuff for a very long time. I don't know about you, but that's not how I want it to go. I'd like to be able to get closer to the core issues and be able to release those things so that I can move on. So I thought if I told you some stories, you might hear how things get locked and linked in. When symptoms show up, they're messengers. And when those messengers appear, it's as if our mind and body is saying, wait, hold it. There's something here that got glitched. Please address it. The problem is most of us never learned how to address it, and with the internet sharing so many tips and tools about mindset changes and meditation kind of things and how do you do all that, but the tools are there and we're learning about them more and more and refining them more and more. So when you think about being abandoned or unwanted or rejected, that can come from multiple ways. Let me tell you some of the ones that might kind of surprise you, but were very much part of client situations. Before I even start this, I want to say that these patterns can start from birth, even at conception. And that may be kind of mind-blowing to some of you who are new to energy, but in the stories, I hope you will hear how that's possible. And I'm going to tell you 3 early on birth stories or shortly after birth that would really have changed the energy of such a little child or a little baby. So the first one is about a client that came to me, and she just had such issues with her mother. Though there were several siblings, this particular child just seemed to be at odds with the mother. And she felt really isolated and excluded, and I don't know if hated was as strong as she got, but really left out of the pack for some reason that she couldn't understand. And I started asking, when did that start? And as early as she could remember, that's how she felt. So I said to her, what was going on when you were conceived, or maybe when your mom was carrying you? What was going on for her? Because here's the deal. When our mothers or our parents are in stress and were conceived that way, or they are going through a trauma when mom is carrying us, that energy will download into the fetus, into the child, in and around them, and create an interruption. Now, I know that to some of you that may sound very far-fetched, but it's the truth, because I want you to hear what happens to this woman. So as we started tapping, she started telling me that her grandmother, which means while her mother was carrying her, her grandmother died. Now, can you imagine the energy of her mom? She's pregnant with a child. Her mother has passed away while she's pregnant with this child, and all the grief emotions, the sadness, the shock, all of that was affecting the fetus. Now, that may sound to some of you like craziness, but it's true. We get affected by other people's moods. Think about it. When you're around someone who's in a happy mood, and you're in a good mood, it lightens and everybody kind of lifts each other up. When you are in a happy mood and you're around somebody who's in a funk or a hard time or whatever, does that not affect you? Well, the same thing happened to this mother while she was pregnant. She's going through all the grief and all the shock. And oh my goodness, and I'm pregnant at the same time. Can you imagine the flood of emotions that were really swirling in her energy? It must have been really, really hard. And the fetus, the child, this particular client, picked up all that energy as if to say, something's wrong with me. Why doesn't mom love me? Now, here's the unspoken connection. When somebody goes through a trauma like that, and it's attached to a certain person or a certain food or a certain circumstance, you may start to dislike the circumstance, the person, or the food because it's now linked to the trauma. I believe that's what a lot of times allergies are about. If you get allergic to a food when you're in the middle of a trauma or something, it's because now you have an attachment to say, oh, this happened and it's attached to this food, which might mean that the food is bad or the situation is bad or the person is bad. And in this case, it was the person is bad. Now, that's not even conscious. I want to stress that. It's not even conscious, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't affect the people involved. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have an energetic glitch that now, how do you fix that? Well, we did a lot of tapping on that kind of trauma after I found out that that had happened. And the understanding came. Now, her mom may not ever get over that detachment, but it brought comfort to her to realize this wasn't personal about her, but it's what got attached. And that can bring calm, just understanding that, being able to switch up our own energy when we're reacting to someone else. So that's the first story. The second story is when I did my presentation at the Lake Placid Olympic Training Center in Lake Placid, New York, for the athletes there at the training center, I did some side tapping. And one of the, not in a group tapping, I did some personal tapping on this one particular guy. And you know, he was a young guy and really wanted to be there and really wanted to turn his life around. And the theme of his life was always, there's always something that happens. There's always something that gets in the way. There's always a trauma or a drama or something going on. I'm always in trouble, blah, blah, blah. And so I started tapping with him just on that. And then it wasn't really moving. And so I said, when did this pattern start? And he said, as long ago as I can remember. I've always been somehow in trouble. And I said, like when you were 3? He goes, maybe even before that. So I asked him, do you know anything about your birth? And his comment was, he was born with a broken arm. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but the fact is, that's what he told me. So that might be what he believes, whether it's true or not. And it might be true. I don't know. I mean, I didn't have any proof. I'm just going by what he's saying. Now, in the process of certain life events when he was in trouble all the time and really didn't want to be in trouble all the time, but somehow it kept following him around, he was labeled as being bipolar. And one of his comments was, I know how to get around the psychologists. I know what to tell them. So it clearly was not that he wasn't aware, but, it wasn't helping. It wasn't working. So we did some tapping on, I was born with a broken arm. A lot of attention was given to him right from the get-go. A lot of pain, a lot of hurt. Life is hurtful. Life is difficult. And I'm screaming my head off because I'm in so much pain. I don't know, again, if this story is true or not, but that's what he's telling me. And in that kind of scenario, can you imagine? That's your first life experience. You come out with all that pain, all that difficulty, people touching you, prodding you, working on you, causing you more pain. Would that not set up a wall to say life is hard, life sucks, I'm screaming, I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm blah, 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 all those kind of emotions, and not being able to express or explain what's going on? I think that would have been horrible. I just can't imagine how difficult that would have been for him. We did some tapping, and one of his and he got teary. And one of his comments was, this is the most calm that I have ever felt, despite all the, counseling and all the stuff that he's ever done. Because a lot of times it's not logical, but it can be energetic and it can be about circumstances that have gotten stuck. the energy of circumstances that have gotten stuck. So that's a second story. The third story is a family was preparing to move shortly after the birth of this particular client. And they were moving from a different city. Also, again, several siblings. And this particular young baby was younger than the older children, much younger than the older children, and got left with the grandmother. Now, in that moment, where is my mom? Why is she leaving me? Why am I here with somebody I don't know? Where's my mom? Can you imagine? Now, little babies have the same kind of feelings. They just can't necessarily express the way we can express as we get older. It wasn't that mom doesn't love me. It wasn't that I'm not good enough. It wasn't all the beliefs that she took on through years and years of being convinced on some unconscious level, because she wasn't really remembering what she felt like. But when we started tapping on that, a lot of tears and anxiety and frustration and sadness came up because we were connecting unconscious thoughts with her beliefs, her patterns, her perceptions, and the energy that was flowing in her body. All of that got glitched. Before the age of 7, we take in everything like a sponge. And whether it's true or not, whether we have misunderstood, misperceived, we can cross lines with things that aren't necessarily the way our mind is perceiving them, but it doesn't negate the fact that it still happens. She wasn't unloved. She wasn't uncared for, but her mom was gone and was her father and the family dynamic. And can you imagine how that might have felt being a little baby, not able to speak, but where's my mom? Where's my family? Because they were all busy moving to another city. I think that's a gigantic situation that, she could have been tapping on, I feel abandoned for years. But when we got more to that, there was an understanding and the energy started releasing. I bring up these stories because if you are going too high up to the symptoms and you're not understanding where they might have started or how things can get linked together, you could be tapping for years and not get anywhere. I did a lot of that and it was frustrating to me. So I kind of had to learn what the heck, how do you get around some of these things and how can you get to the core a lot faster? And some of these stories I hope will help you to understand that there's a lot more to the story than just I feel abandoned, unwanted, and unloved. Now, I don't have an adoption story because I haven't worked with an adoptee, but I would say that that same kind of energy is in place, maybe to the last story of I got put with somebody else and that disconnect. That's why you see some of the shows that connect families that haven't been connected for years. And there is such an emotional connection because we feel each other's energies, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. I wanted to leave you with some of these stories just to give you some reference, some ideas. And I think when people hear stories, they may be able to reference them to, oh my gosh, I never knew that was possible. Or, oh my gosh, I never thought about it that way. Or it never occurred to me, because we just go on living, right? Well, part of us does, but part of us is still glitching with the unwanted, feeling disconnected or rejected. Now, what happens is when we get into relationships and those same kind of things are triggered. Now, I gave some early references. It doesn't always happen that early. It might happen in school. It might happen with a friend. Before the age of 7, though, I would say still that's where you need to focus to clear up some of the roots and the themes. But my hope is that when you hear stories, when I share stories, that there will be some connection or deeper understanding to look beyond just the obvious of what's happening right now. So when you have a breakup, when you are triggered by somebody who's passed, or a friend that moves away, or it might be that initial situation, but it might have roots someplace deeper. And you can tap on the situation, the passing, the breakup, whatever. But most of the time, those things have roots. A lot of the time, maybe not even most of the time, but I would say a lot of the time. Yeah, I would probably say most of the time too. Those roots are earlier on. And when you can clear up the roots, it's amazing how other things will fall into place that you don't have to tap on. You don't have to go through 88 million different scenarios. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. And if you can get to where the template was started, a lot of times you will have greater success. and other things when they fall apart, it could be a shorter, sweeter understanding. Oh my goodness. This all makes sense because now when you understand the template and what got interrupted, no wonder I feel that way, and no wonder. So this is part 1 of a surprising perception twist because I wanted to give you some stories to give you an idea of what's possible. You might have been left at school. You might have gotten scared in a grocery store. I went back to early stuff, but it can be early life lessons where you got left or abandoned or felt lost or something happened or you got left by a sibling when they were taking care of you or played a joke on you or whatever. But go back to the early stuff. When you're being triggered, what does that remind you of and how far back can you go? I would strongly suggest before the age of 7. Doesn't always happen that way, but strongly suggest before the age of 7. Start to think back into the memory bank. What else happened? When did I first feel this way? Because a lot of times that's when it'll pop open. This is Joanne from TrueAuthenticPower.com from Tapping.me. If this resonates with you, again, subscribe to my channel and you can be connected with my newsletter on my website, TrueAuthenticPower.com. If you have any questions, you can also drop me an email or connect with me through some links on my website. And until next time, until I do part 2, and I'm not sure if I'm going to post that here or if I'm going to post that in my membership group, but suffice it to say, it will be available and I will let you know. Until our paths cross again, bye-bye for now.